Those three magic words that every spouse longs to hear. I love... Nope. No, not those words. These words. I was wrong. I was all in on Matthew Meyer coming from Baylor to North Carolina to take that last Tar Heel scholarship this year. But it should have been Pete Nance all along. I was wrong.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, it's Tuesday, June 21st, 2022. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, and I want to thank you for making Locked On Tar Heels your first listen or your first watch every single day. Please don't forget, we're free and available anywhere you get podcasts. So go ahead and subscribe right now. If you're watching this thing, smash that like button. Leave a comment about why you're so excited about Pete Nance and the upcoming Carolina basketball season. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Pete Nance is a Tar Heel. The scholarship is gone. The roster is loaded and ready for the upcoming season. And so today, we're just going to unpack that. It's going to be a fun week to get to talk about Pete Nance. So today, what does it mean for Pete Nance to be a Tar Heel? What does it help this season? What does it make this roster look like? What does it do? Tomorrow on Wednesday's show, Coach Pat Kilby and I are going to break down Pete Nance's game. So that's not today. Today is all about what does this mean for Carolina. And here's how we're going to break it down. Why does Carolina need anybody, somebody? Second, why specifically Pete Nance? And then third, the big question everybody always wants to talk about, say it with me, who are going to be the starting five? Right, those are the three areas we're headed today. So first, why anyone? Well, you probably recall that for a while it was looking like Carolina wouldn't have any scholarships available. But then Kerwin Walton, late in the game, decided to transfer, and so that meant that the Tar Heels had one available scholarship for the upcoming season. And I gotta say, the Carolina family has been like quite vociferously divided on what should happen with this. Quite hilariously divided, to be honest with you. Split on whether to add another player through the transfer portal or maybe even an incoming freshman that's out there somewhere. Or to give that scholarship to one of the walk-ons, which essentially says, we've got what we need and we're good. The whole time I have been in the camp of we need to get somebody else in. I'm not saying that I'm right or that I was right specifically because that's what they did. It's just as I looked at the roster, I felt that the Tar Heels needed someone else. And so what I want to do here first is unpack why I believe that is. So first off, I agree that Carolina does not need anyone in the backcourt. The Tar Heels are flush with guards and wings. In fact, it was probably a good thing that Kerwin Walton transferred because that's just another big discrepancy of guards and wings versus big men in the front court. And so I'm in full agreement there. Don't go out and get another guard or wing. I would rather not have somebody than have another one of those. But what Carolina does need is front court help. Now, this is a weird turn of events when you think back to the Roy Williams era. Think about his roster, Roy Williams' last team. You've got an overwhelmingly loaded front court, and definitely too much, in fact, because you had Garrison Brooks. Frankly, of the four in the rotation, is the least talented, but was the most experienced, so he got one of the starting nods, along with Armando Bacot, and who is doing what he's doing. And then the sub, you have Walker Kessler coming off the bench and Day'Ron Sharpe coming off the bench, both of whom are probably starting anywhere else in America, if not all but like 5 other schools. And so you've got those 4. Plus, don't forget Walker Miller, who then transferred and went on to become a second-team all-conference player last year. And so you got all 4, plus Walker Miller, of those guys in the stable. But now you lose Daron Sharp to the draft. Garrison Brooks graduates but uses the COVID year to go to Mississippi State. Walker Kessler transfers to Auburn, where he single-handedly has more blocks than the entire Carolina roster last year. And now he himself is going off to the draft. And all you have is Bacot. And so in comes Brady Manek, not really a true 5. Can play inside, but much more a stretch 4 kind of guy is what Manek is and does. Obviously, when Bacot went to the bench last year, Brady would slide to the 5 and you'd play a little bit of a smaller lineup. But that is what last year looked like. You go from this overloaded front court to a pretty thin front court, if we're being honest with one another. And so, last year, that puts you in a position where Armando Bacot gets hurt against Duke and then really hurt, or doubly hurt, I guess, perhaps, against Kansas in the national championship game. And you're one bum ankle away from a national championship, if we're being honest. I was there in the building. Carolina was winning that game, even though Kansas had that crazy comeback. And then Armando goes down, and in comes Daron Sharp. No. In comes Walker Kessler. No. You just got to go small at that point. And that's where Carolina is if they don't have more front court help. And that's a big part of why I've been on we need to give somebody else this last scholarship that can help in the front court. Because you need someone that can both start alongside Mondo, that's going to be a complement to him, somebody in the realm of Brady Manek. Somebody that can both start alongside him and provide a backup to him when Mondo goes to the bench with foul trouble or just needs to take a breather or whatever it is. You need somebody who can do both of those things. And I've been saying it all offseason. I'm going to keep saying it. There is no Brady Manek out there. Pete Nance is not Brady Manek. Matthew Meyer's not Brady Manek. Nobody is. Nobody does exactly what he does, that height with that level of three-point shooting. Because that's what a Hubert Davis coached team needs and wants. So, if you're not adding to your roster, who's your 5 when Mondo's out? Jalen Washington? He's going to be a great player. Is he going to be ready to go for this by the time the season starts? Seems like he will be. He hasn't played basketball in a long time. And he's a freshman. And he's skinny. He's going to be a great basketball player. He's your 5 in ACC play? Cool. Or what about Puff Johnson? You going to slide him to the 5? Nope. Dontrez Style? No. He can't be a 5. Tyler Nickel? He's a 3. Maybe a 4 if you push it. It's not a 5. Leaky Black? He's probably your best candidate if you don't have anybody else to go to a small ball 5 and go with like a lineup of Leaky, Puff Johnson, Seth Trimble, RJ Davis, and Caleb Love. That's what you're looking at doing if you don't bring anybody else in. You have to add to this roster. Also, without adding to the roster, who's your 3rd reliable three-point shooter? You got RJ, you got Caleb. They're great, but it can't be all them. You need to add others. There are others with capability. Seth Trimble, Tyler Nickel can throw it in. Puff Johnson can. But these are all unproven guys. Even Puff. He's made some threes. But for his career, Puff Johnson has made 7. 7 made threes in his career. So he's probably going to get there. Seems like it. He's made 7 threes in his career. So you've got other guys, but they're unproven. You need someone who can be a complement to Mondo, start alongside him, be a backup to Mondo when he goes to the bench, and somebody who can hit the 3. When I look at this roster, Carolina doesn't have that. Or didn't, I should say. Now, there's also the question, hey, what about development? What about developing our in-house guys, the guys that have been here, the Puff Johnson, the Dontrez Styles, these guys? It's like, what Or are we just going to keep rooting them out and bringing other people in? Well, yeah, if it's going to help the Tar Heels win basketball games, they're absolutely going to keep doing that. Keep in mind, we as fans keep looking at this and saying, we're good, we don't need somebody else. All the while, Armando Bacot's out here all over social media recruiting these guys to come. Do you think Mondo would be doing that if he didn't want somebody? Do you think the coaching staff would be even out looking for other guys if they didn't want somebody? The players and coaches want another player, and they went out and got him. And it's going to help fill this roster up. So, hopefully, I've convinced you that the Tar Heels needed to add someone, anyone. And now, I need to convince you that I was wrong about Matthew Meyer, and that Pete Nance is the guy. We're going to talk about that in just a minute, but first let me tell you about BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for all your sports betting needs and info. Find all the latest developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's NHL playoffs and, of course, the Major League Baseball season. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering info, including live betting, esports, and more. And BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about all the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. So we just answered the question, why someone? Why anyone? Hopefully I've convinced you. And now I want to answer the question, why Pete Nance specifically? Well, we just talked about that Carolina needs someone who can both start alongside Mondo and back him up. There's not many people that have that capability to be something of a true center-ish, but also a stretch four. Matthew Meyer ain't it when it comes to that. He could absolutely be a four, but outside of a four, he in the era of positionless basketball, he's like a four that trends down towards a three rather than a four that could trend up towards a five. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Pete Nance is really kind of either one in this era, 4 or 5. This big old honking dude. Yeah, Matthew Meyer's big, but he's not Pete Nance big. Pete Nance is Pete Nance big. I've also heard this from a lot of people, but Pete Nance isn't athletic. He, I watch his Northwestern tape and he can't move out on the perimeter, can't defend. You know what the biggest stain on Brady Manek's game, the biggest X negative against him? Can't move, can't defend. He found a way to do it. Because you know what? Good basketball players with NBA fathers and NBA brothers, figure it out. They figure out a way to do this. I think Pete Nance is going to be just fine playing defense out on the perimeter. Is it going to be leaky? Absolutely not. That's not his game. Is he going to be serviceable, switching when he needs to? Armando Bacot's figured it out. He's better than Drew Timme at it. It's going to happen, man. Pete Nance is going to get out. He's going to do this. Get there. Now, why Pete Nance? Experience. We talked about who's going to back up Mondo when he's out of the game. Jalen Washington? Well, his health is a question already. But would you rather have him, who hasn't played a single game in college or even much high school basketball in the last couple of years? Or would you rather have a 4-year player from a major conference, Big Ten, who's played 107 career games, made 74 career starts, is in the 1,000-point club, has made over 100 three-pointers in his career, and last year did so at a 40-something% clip? Yeah. I'll take that experience any day of the week. Bring it on. What about the lineage? I've already alluded to this. Pete's dad, Larry Sr., played at Clemson and then 13 years in the NBA for the Cavs, for the Suns. He was a 3-time All-Star. Pete's brother, Larry Jr., currently in the NBA. He played at Wyoming and has been in the NBA since 2015, currently a New Orleans Pelican. You don't just get to these levels by happenstance. These are big, honking dudes. And when you play in the NBA for over a decade, and then your brother has played in the NBA almost now a decade, like, there's something to that. This family has some genes, but they've also figured out how to use those well and stick. And that is a big deal. That is a big, big, big deal. What about size for Pete Nance? Honestly, he's more of a true center than was Brady Manek. And so there's some things that Brady Manek brought to the table that Pete Nance doesn't. Brady Manek was and is a more prolific three-point shooter. These kinds of things. Probably a little more athletic, although that remains to be seen. We're going to have to see it more in real-time action. But Pete Nance brings to the table being more of a true backup for Armando at the 5 when Mondo goes out. I know I've said that a lot, but it's true and is what's needed and necessary. And so we just keep going back to that. And what about this three-point shooting? Why Pete Nance? Well, let's look at last year's numbers for three-point shooting. Some of the other people in the equation for who we've bandied about being the starting 4, if not bringing somebody in. What about Puff Johnson? Well, for his last year, was 6 for 26 from 3. 26 attempts, made 23.1% of them. I love Puff. I think he's a phenomenal basketball player and an even better young man. And he brings so much to the table as a basketball player. But it's unproven. Dontrez Styles, huge 3 against Baylor. It was one of 3 threes he made all season. It was 3 of 18, shot 16.7% from 3. Again, like, it's just not there yet. Like, it might be in him, but it's unproven. And this is a team that's primed to win now. You're not in development mode. You're not in rebuilding mode. You don't go... Like, if we're thinking professional sports teams, this is when you go out and sign a big-time free agent to come and stack your team because we're ready to win right now. This is when you go spend your money and drop the bag as a professional organization, not bring up some kid from AAA to develop him. Again, all due respect to Puff, all due respect to Dontrez. They're going to get their development, but you need somebody who's ready to win right now. And when we look at Pete Nance versus Matthew Meyer last year, Meyer shot decently. He made 44 threes on 136 attempts, but that's just 32.4%. Now, he actually made 2 more threes than did Pete Nance. Pete Nance made 42 threes, but only took 93 attempts to do so. That's 45.2% clip. Even for the career, let's look at the career numbers for these same 4 guys. Dontrez Styles, obviously it's the same number as last year, 3 for 18, 16.7%. Puff Johnson made 1 3 his freshman year, obviously was hurt, didn't play much, but 7 for 35, 20%. Matthew Meyer and Pete Nance, very comparable three-point shooters for their career. Meyer, 111 threes and 322 attempts. That's 34.5% three-point shooting. That's 5 more threes than Pete Nance has made for his career, 106 in 298 attempts. And so, yeah, Matthew Meyer's made 5 more career attempts, but Pete Nance has shot a higher percentage for his career by 1%. But never has Matthew Meyer had a single season where he made 40% or more of his threes. Pete Nance hit 45% of his threes last year. Now, here's the funny thing. I think that means he's not shooting enough. I know that sounds wacky, but here's what I mean. If somebody's shooting 45% from 3, they need to be getting the ball up more to where it brings their average down to 40%, right? Like, I would take him shooting another 100 threes this season and making another 50 and shoot just, I know that math doesn't work out. But, like, to shoot enough threes to where he's making a ton more and his average goes down to 40%. Like, if you're shooting at 45% and you only took 93, you need to get it up more. And you know what's going to happen at North Carolina? Under Hubert Davis? The NBA's third best three-point shooter of all time? You're going to shoot a couple threes. So, again, Nance does not have as many three-point attempts or makes in his career as did Brady Manek. But so neither does Matthew Meyer. But again, rest assured, in this offense, this was even true for Brady last year. Like, hey, I was able to shoot a ton at Oklahoma, but nowhere near the green light that I had at Carolina this year. And so if Pete Nance can come in and do what he did last year at Northwestern and be a reliable third three-point shooter along with Caleb Love and RJ Davis, watch out, folks. Again, not going to bring the same stuff as Brady Manek. But why Pete Nance? Look at all of this we've just talked about. His size, his lineage, his experience, his ability to both start alongside Mondo and back him up. And his three-point shooting numbers. It's there. He's just got to keep doing it and shoot it more. So, there we go. Why someone? Gotta have it. Why Pete Nance? Just laid it out for you. And now that Pete Nance is a Tar Heel, here's the big $1 million question that everybody always wants to ask. How will Hubert Davis deploy his starting five? Who's it going to be? We know 4 of them. It's going to be a lot of fun to guess the 5th. Let's talk about that in just a second. After I tell you about NBA Draft Night, our live Locked On NBA Draft Show is not enough for, one live NBA Draft Show is not enough for Locked On. The entire NBA channel is going live on NBA Draft Night. That's right. Every Locked On NBA team will be live. So if you have a favorite NBA team, make sure you subscribe right now to their Locked On YouTube channel so you get notified when they go live on Draft Night on Thursday. Okay, so the big question is who's going to be the starting lineup for North Carolina? I think it's a given that it's RJ Davis, Caleb Love, Leaky Black, somebody, and Armando Bacot. We've already laid out in today's conversation a lot of who the probabilities for that would be. We look at Jalen Washington. We look at Puff Johnson. We look at Dontrez Styles. We look at Pete Nance. Could be somebody else, but I think those, probably not Tyler Nickel. I think it would be one of those other 4. And to me, it's if everything unfolds as it should, barring injury, barring some kind of suspension, whatever, for anybody, Pete Nance is the no-brainer to me. Now, we got to go through it. We got to see how it all fits together and all those things. But on paper, it's the 4 starters from last year and Pete Nance. That's just what makes sense. My card's on the table right here out of the gate. I don't even want to try to be all tricky and hold it close and whatever. No. So, I've also crowdsourced this thing. I was curious what everyone else thought. So I put up a poll both on Twitter and on YouTube to essentially say, now that Pete Nance is committed, who's Carolina's starting 5, the 4 from last year? And so on Twitter, you only get 4 options. So I put up Pete Nance, Puff Johnson, Dontrez Styles, and Jalen Washington. On YouTube, you can do more. So I did those 4 plus other combination. And so here's how it shook out. Pretty close numbers on both Twitter and YouTube. Twitter, when I checked it pretty recently, had 292 votes. 78% of them had Pete Nance as the 5th starter. 18.5% to Puff Johnson, 3% to Dontrez Styles, and 0.3%, 0.3% to Jalen Washington. On YouTube, there were 367 votes. Pretty similar numbers. Pete Nance, 75%, Puff Johnson, 20%. So Nance a little bit down, Johnson a little bit up. Dontrez Styles, 1%, Jalen Washington, 1%, and some other combination, 2%. And so pretty essentially 3 out of 4 people on both platforms are saying that Pete Nance will be the 5th starter. And then essentially 1 in 5 is saying it will be Puff Johnson, and then negligible votes for Dontrez or Jalen or another combination. Now, what I want to do in real time a little bit here is read some of the comments that people put and react to those, because I think that's a fun part of this conversation of who are going to be the starting five. And so let's start with the Twitter comments, and I'll shout out the Twitter handles and the YouTube folks when we get to those. This first one says, Puff would have to gain 20 pounds of muscle to start. And that's probably true, because if he's starting, he's going to be the 4, or maybe he's the 3 and Leaky's the 4. I guess we'd have to consider that as a reality. But Puff his body needs to grow before he could be that. He's got essentially the height. Would love to have another inch or two on him to be the 4. But yeah. And so that comment was from 91 OMG Biz on Twitter there. At D_Steel2352 says, should be Nance, no reason to go small ball with Johnson at the 4. I mean, certainly we're going to see small ball lineups, but for the starting 5 out of the gate, like if you're thinking iron 5 again, you're not going to go small ball to start, unless just the opponent might dictate that from time to time, depending on what their starting lineup is. And that's what our next comment is. This is from at KingKey252, says, Pete starts, but plenty of time with Puff and Trez at the 4, with Bacot or Nance at the 5. And yeah, absolutely. I think that's the thing we're forgetting, is that, yeah, we have a starting 5, but, I mean, I'm going to assume that last year was an anomaly with essentially playing the iron 5 and then 2 or 3, getting some minutes for Dontrez and Puff here and there and a couple others. I think we're going to see much more minutes from the reserves. This is just a much deeper and more experienced team. And I think Coach Davis is going to really look to get more time on the bench for the starters, especially when you have somebody that can really spell Caleb and RJ and Seth Trimble. I think that is a huge thing. And so, yeah, keep in mind, we're just talking about who starts the game. And so that's a big deal that King Key says there. This next one is from at Trevor Keels, but instead of who just played at Duke last year's going on to the draft, but it's K Heels instead of just Keels. That's hilarious. And says, I think Pete gets the start because of experience. We talked about that. I'm with you, Trevor Keels, but minutes are going to be spread out more to give starters more of a rest. That'll allow them to go 110% when they do get the PT. And I want to point this one out because, yes, absolutely. I think the minutes will be spread out, but we talk about this idea of what that allows you to do is when you're in the game, Armando Bacot, you don't have to preserve yourself as much. You can just go. And when you need to get out, you give the signal and you're out. Love that. And then this is very true. This is from at Aaron Cox 97. It says Hubert Davis is big on practice, so we'll see who shows up and shows out. That is true. I have tremendous faith in all these guys, though, and I love that from Aaron Cox. Yeah, Coach Davis is like, I don't choose who plays in the games. The players choose who play in the games, and so ultimately, it's got to come down to what they do in the offseason, how they prepare. I mean, Pete Nance has just committed, and we're in late June, and so he's got to get in and working with these guys as summer practices happen and the summer pickup games. We want to get him to Chapel Hill as soon as possible. And then the last Twitter comment here is from at the UNC family. Most likely Pete Nance, because he can stretch the floor with the three-point shooting along with the size and ability to bang inside. And so that just goes in line with everything I've said here of everything he brings, from three-point shooting to being able to start alongside Mondo to having the size and the bulk to be able, and having done so at the Big Ten level, to be able to do so when Mondo goes to the bench. Now, let's look at the YouTube comments as well. This is from Terrell Bigelow, and Terrell says, Pete Nance will start at the 4, Puff will rotate in on the 3 and 4 spots, Styles will rotate in 2. I also see Tyler Nickel getting some playing time at the 3 and 4. And so that's very similar to one of those Twitter quotes, but I wanted to bring this one up just because of the Tyler Nickel of it all. Tyler is a big dude. at and will be playing at the 3. Like essentially Leaky Black size with more offensive ability, at least at the high school level, right? He's got to come in and prove it as a college player, but as Coach Davis always says, you're going to get your shot at some point, and so Tyler Nickel will as well. I'll read these next two together. This one's from Retta. She or he, I'm not sure, says, there's no way Pete Nance commits to UNC if he doesn't know he's going to start. Puff will come off the bench and play the 3 and 4, which is better for him because he can be versatile. That's a great point. Puff's versatility there. And then this other person, Jesse McCord, says something very similar. Nance wouldn't have come to UFC if he wasn't going to start. In other news, even with his commitment, I'm still hoping Hubert will roll out. I guess this is separate, but still from Jesse. In other news, even with Pete's commitment, I'm still hoping Hubert will roll out the small ball lineup of Davis, Trimble, Love. Whew, I'd love to see those 3 together. Leaky Black, Armando Bacot at some point, if for no other reason than to satisfy my curiosity. You and me both, Jesse McCord. Bring that on. And so, now, both of these comments, I hear it. I also know that similar to Roy Williams or Dean Smith, Hubert Davis is not going to guarantee a starting spot. He's going to guarantee that he will be able to fight for the starting spot and compete for the starting spot. But given all his intangibles, given everything he can do, it seems highly likely that he would win that battle. And so I think Nance is seeing, even if he doesn't win the starting spot, a very obvious road to a ton of playing time. He's not going to come and be stuck as Armando's backup. That's just not true. He could have found somewhere else to go to be a starter. This next one is from the Canva classroom on YouTube there, and says, depends on the summer workouts and how the players all mesh together. And I mean, ultimately, yeah, that's true. That's what it boils down to is you got to prove it in the summer. That's where a team is made and refined in the fire. It's not, yeah, things happen and change in the midst of the season, but right now, June, July, August, that's where it all comes together. So, this one is from Christopher Ellis. Christopher says, yes, sir, that is the best starting 5 right there, meaning the 4 from last year and Pete Nance. Nick Chavis says, should be Styles or Johnson play these guys before they leave? And that's a very interesting point from Nick there about this idea of transferability of everyone. I mean, there is something to if Dontrez, Puff, some of these others keep not necessarily getting recruited over, but transferred in over. I could see them becoming disgruntled. But as a competitor, it also makes me want to go out and compete and earn my minutes. And I think that's what they're all going to be able to do. And they're all going to be able to, like, Dontrez and Puff are clearly already in the rotation, whether they're starting or not. Coach Davis showed that last year. And now they've got more competition with this crop of freshmen coming in. So got some big things there. Last 2 comments here. This one is from Rodney Sessoms. And Rodney says, it'll be between Johnson and Nance as to who starts. But my guess is that it'll be Puff Johnson. And I think that's right. I think it's going to be one of these 2 guys ultimately. As I've said, my chips are down that it'll be Pete Nance. But that's my option 1 and 2. I think it's either Pete Nance, or if Pete Nance hadn't committed and Carolina didn't get anybody else, I think it probably would have been Puff Johnson at that 4 spot. And so, you and me fighting it out, Rodney, between Pete Nance and Puff Johnson. That'll be great. And I want to end on this quote because I just love this. This is from Raven or Ravon. I'm not sure. Forgive me. Gore. And we'll go with Ravon because I think that sounds awesome. Says, the answer is whomever earns it, the hashtag Carolina way. And what a great note to end on. That's the truth of the matter. Everyone comes in, nothing's guaranteed. I mean, honestly, nothing's guaranteed for the 4 returners. Seth Trimble might come in and embarrass Caleb or RJ, and if so, they got to fight for it, And so there's lots to go on there. But I just love that idea. Whomever earns it, the hashtag Carolina way. Man, that's cool. Now, I want to end this section on this, though. Keep this in mind. This conversation is all about the starting five and who I and who you all think it will be. I'd love to have more conversation about that. And so if you want to get your voice in on the action, leave a comment for me here so I can know who you think it'll be. But keep this in mind. The initial starting five from last year is not your Iron Five. Is not the five young men who will go down in Carolina immortality because of what they did last year. No, keep in mind, it was Dawson Garcia. It was not Brady Manek. Brady Manek was the team player biding his time because he was older, more mature, and could handle it than Dawson Garcia. Let's just be honest about that, right? Yeah, you're with me. You saw it. So, just because the starting five is the starting five here at the beginning of the year, Hubert Davis is going to tinker, mess around, figure out what's best for this team so they can get right back to where they were last year. Well, that does it for today's episode of Locked on Tar Heels. Keep in mind, tomorrow, Coach Pat Kilby and I are going to be breaking down Pete Nance's game. Remember, today was all about what does Pete Nance bring? Why does Pete Nance make sense? And tomorrow is what does this guy do? Can't wait to talk about that. It'll be a lot of fun. Thank you so much for making Locked on Tar Heels your first listen or your first watch of the day. Please make sure you go subscribe, smash the like button, and leave a great comment wherever you're watching this right now. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Heels. You can follow me on Twitter at Isaac Shade, ISAACSCHADE. The first picks of the Ultimate NBA Mock Draft have been made. Keep in mind, the NBA Draft is 2 days away. It's Thursday. So search now for the Ultimate NBA Mock Draft and get over 50 insiders. The Odyssey sports experts, the draft experts of Locked On NBA Big Board. All these guys coming together. The 5-episode Ultimate NBA Mock Draft is underway now. And so make Ultimate NBA Mock Draft your second listen today. Thanks so much for spending part of your Tuesday hanging out with me, talking about Pete Nance, this complete Carolina roster. Oh boy, it's coming together. Cannot wait for this season to get underway. But I don't want to look ahead because I gotta appreciate today and everything I've been given. Because just like every day, today is a great day to be a Tar Heel. Until tomorrow, peace!